We got Spock, T'Pol, Jadzia, Stamets, I don't know, all kinds of science officers and officers within the science division. And we're going to talk all about it today on the main viewer, of course. So let's just go ahead and get started. Let's go have some fun. We're going to skip all that other stuff. I want to introduce today first the people joining in for the fun today. We have a forensic entomologist, Dr. Susan V. Gruner. What does that
you
do,
mean
by
a
the
chef?
Forensic entomology is entomology, which is the study of insects, and forensic means anything that has to do with the law, the legal system. So those two things go together, and that's what I do. And I'm wearing my science blue uniform.
Awesome.
And I've got wicked cool earrings, I might say for myself.
Yes, looks amazing.
Ooh.
We also, that woo you heard was our resident medical doctor, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal. Anne-Marie, what does a medical doctor do, by the way?
Well, on this planet, we focus on humans.
We also have an astrobiologist and planetary scientist, Dr. Mike Wong.
Hello, it's really great to be here on the main viewer.
Mm-hmm. You also have your own podcast, right? We can talk a little bit more about that later, but that is something really cool. Everybody at home, stay tuned. His podcast has the exact name of a show. Wait, that gives it away, doesn't it? I was going to say, stay tuned to find out what it is, but that
Prodigy?
almost gives it away. And that clever quip was by our resident genetic and evolutionary biologist, Dr. Mohamed Noor.
Hello. It's always great to be here. Thank you so much for having me again.
In your Discovery uniform. That's
yeah,
cool.
had to sport the Discovery science uniform specifically.
Okay, so first things first, before we get into all the science talk, by the way, everybody at home that's watching, we see you and looks like you're having fun. Gaylenda, Wardogheim, Kimber Spore, Scott Jensen, David Gregory, Linda, we see you all. All right, so I don't know if any of you know my Falling Tower partner, Michael Kenyon Rosenberg. He also had a science/medical bit of news recently. We were recording an episode. In fact, it was an episode we were recording just a few minutes after we recorded with Mohamed Noor here.
I was wondering that.
Yeah, it was right after that. So we were done recording an episode with Mohamed Noor, which will come out very soon. And we're recording another one with an actress named Lila Shacker, good friend of ours. And Michael, who has been suffering from kidney disease for quite some time now, and he's been on the waiting list for a while for a new kidney.
Almost
and he was
6 years.
Yeah, he was doing a peritoneal dialysis, which was the same kind of dialysis that our good friend, Mr. Aaron Eisenberg, was doing. And in the middle of recording, Mike says, sorry, hang on, I got an emergency. So he cuts out, and Lila and I just kind of went on for like 20 minutes without him, kind of didn't know if it was bad or what the situation was. And he comes back and makes the announcement that, Anne-Marie, you're smiling so hard. Do you want to say
it so much. He got off the kidney wait list and got an actual kidney, and almost nobody even ever has to wait over 5 years. It's just so wonderful that finally happened.
Yeah, it was really cool. He came back and announced it. We're still recording at that point, and he announced that very night, which was Sunday night, Halloween, right? He'd be going in at 10 o'clock. And good news, his wife has been in contact and texting for us and all that, and it all went very well. He's great. Resting. So that was Sunday night, Monday morning. And, he kind of woke up a tiny bit on Monday, said a couple words to her. And today, as of Tuesday, she said he sat up, and was sitting in a chair and is eating, and things seem to be functioning well. So that's the great news on the Falling Tower front.
He's finally going to finish Star Trek Enterprise. Time.
Priorities.
All right. That's out of the way. nothing's really as cool as that. We should have
I
ended
know.
with that. It's really like the most important
It's
part.
epically cool. It's so great. And he's such a great guy. You know, it's just wonderful to see that come through for him.
Yeah, we're very happy for you, Mike. I'm sure he's watching right now. I'm sure he's like, get out of my way, Doc. I gotta watch this thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so very cool, Mike. We're very happy for you and congratulations on everything. So let's talk about science officers or Star Trek officers within the science division. We've got here so far Spock, of course, Jadzia, 7 of 9. She was what an astrometrics, right? T'Pol, Stamets, but is Stamets more of an engineer? Because we got to keep the engineers in a different. Does he wear gold?
He wears the science uniform. He
Yeah,
wears
it's
the
like
science
this.
badge. And he, I think, would say he's an astromycologist. So
That's definitely
to me,
what
that
it
sounds science.
Absolutely. Those are all the earmarks right there, right?
But it's
And
true
in
that if
Star-
you were to say who the chief engineer was, you'd probably still say Stamets too.
Right, but they only made him that, I think, because of the
Yeah.
fact that he connected to the spore
The
drive
spore
as
drive,
a
yeah.
scientist. That's right. Yeah,
It's a
I
gray
agree with you.
area.
Yeah,
Mhm. But definitely a scientist, definitely in the side of scientists. Yeah.
totally.
Also, Ensign Wildman, she was in the science, but I don't know what she specialized in. Do you guys know?
Yeah, me
It was
either.
xenobiology, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
Cool.
I love her.
Okay. Then we also
This is the elder,
have,
not the younger.
I love both. The other one's just a captain's assistant.
There you go.
I don't think that's science.
Probably not.
then we also have Saru. I mean, now he's like a commander or a captain, and then now he's an ambassador, who knows? But he was definitely a science officer. And let's see.
Janeway,
Arium.
wasn't she into science
Well,
too?
she-
Janeway
used to
was
be a
prior to being
scientist.
captain. That's true.
But have we ever seen her as a science officer?
Mm.
Doesn't she one time like do some extra calculations? I can't remember the episode where
Oh, the
she's
warp
like, I
particles
used to
one?
be a, maybe it was, well, that one a little bit, but then
Yeah.
another time, like later on, there's like some sort of science thing, and she's like, let me just double check, and like she goes in sciences off camera. But
Oh. Well, definitely she was very sciencey with that. What's the one where she was with the guy who was pretending to defect but wasn't really defecting? You know what I'm talking
oh
about?
yeah, counterpoint.
Yes,
What is that?
counterpoint. Yes,
The-
exactly.
the
That's it.
hot
She was
one?
she
Yeah.
was hot. Yeah, she was all in on the science of that one. Like,
Mm.
could we do this and this? And they worked on it for days at a time. But I mean, a
And
lot of them do,
also
like
a lot
Tilly
of-
does that
A
too.
lot of pheromones.
Yeah, that too.
Mm-hmm.
Different kind of science.
We also have Arium, who I'd forgotten until I looked
Oh,
it up. Lieutenant Commander Arium. She was a science officer. Adira, looked up Adira just to confirm. It is confirmed. Science officer. Somebody on the borderline that I kind of wanted to throw in, but if I can't even remember his name, I don't think we should. The Benzite from Next Generation.
Why am
He
I
was
not
a science-
surprised? You just love adding benzite into any discussion.
Anybody remember his name?
Are you just saying that because he's blue?
Okay.
I mean, Wesley is everything.
Okay, everybody at home, let us know if we should include the Benzite, probably not, and what his name was for anybody that remembers it.
So, I mean,
Marda?
Oh yeah, it was like Mordock or
Mordock.
something.
Oh,
Modoc? Well, that's
Modoc. Oh gosh. It's
Now
not
for the
Modoc.
more fringe people. Here's okay. One of the most underrated people, in my opinion, Hoshi. Now, she is technically a communications officer, right? Yet she wore a blue uniform, or she had the blue stripes in Enterprise, maybe because it was more like xenobiology or xenolinguistics or something. What do you guys think? Does Hoshi go into the category of communications like an Uhura, or is she more in the science blue?
That's
Again,
a great
me-
question.
Go,
Please.
go for it, Sue.
I can't answer it. I think that linguistics, I don't know, is that a science? She was kind of like a human linguistics computer. She was so great at translating.
Yeah,
Is that
absolutely.
science? I think so, but
I would throw
know.
Hoshi into the science category as well. Her role as the first person to try to communicate with all of these different alien species and succeeding sort of speaks to me that there is some kind of underlying universal law of humanoid language out there that we haven't discovered yet because we have an n=1 for humanoid language right now. But because Hoshi was able to essentially be a universal translator before there were universal translators, it speaks to the idea that linguistics is a science that one can derive laws of and use those laws to predict and very quickly translate brand new languages that you encounter out there. So I say science, absolutely.
The
And under
ultimate
pressure, no
polyglot
less.
she was. Isn't that what they call people that speak like a million languages? Is it polyglot? Is that the
Yeah, I think that's right.
correct term?
I think that's right.
Also, like I did undergrad in biology, and one of my favorite professors, Dr. Seaforth, he had done like chimpanzee and like non-human primate animal behavior studies. And so like that plus also like the dolphin papers and the bird papers like really reminds me of how Hoshi works in early enterprise, which then sort of, you know, falls into biology and then xenobiology. So plus she looks great in blue.
Yeah. And for me, since I don't know anything about this and have no business speaking on this, and I'm just a Star Trek fan, I say she was wearing blue, so that counts. that she's officially, as far as the writers and producers of Star Trek are concerned, she was in the sciences division. Okay, cool. So Hoshi's in.
I'll claim her.
What about? Okay, so Jadzia obviously was a science officer. What about Esri? She was a counselor, right? Which would put her more into medicine, correct?
It's kind of borderline medicine. I mean, like she would never substitute for Bashir, for example. I mean, obviously, like, you know, there are people there are people who get MDs who are psychiatrists, right? She was not, I don't think she was a psychiatrist. I don't feel like she was writing prescriptions. She was more just a counselor, like think of her like a school counselor kind of thing. They'll elevate it from that. I wouldn't put her in the science category so much. I mean, she's smart, but like a lot, if we go by smart, like that's like everybody and there would count.
Except for Riker. No, I'm just kidding. Love you, Riker. Well, we remember him in Genesis, right? I mean, he did not, I didn't see, they were the same picture to me, the before and after. Genesis was when he turned into the Cro-Magnon anyway, whatever it was. I don't know. Mohamed's probably thinking, Ryan, that's not a Cro-Magnon.
No, close enough. Primitive humanoid, good enough.
Mike, what do you think? She's more of a school counselor than a scientist.
I don't know. I tend to be very inclusive in the scientist definition here. I mean, somebody who's well versed in psychology to me could be a scientist for sure. So the counselors, absolutely, we could count them as scientists for the purposes of this discussion.
I love that. Because also, like, even if you're just talking, still they've had like a lot of training that also includes science.
Right,
and, like the workings of
Anne Marie,
neural
you're reading
pathways.
my mind.
Well, it was tricky there because I mean, at that point,
I just
all
like claiming
engineers count
everybody.
too.
Well, that's the other thing that's crazy. Like, I do think, yeah, I mean, especially, well, then I guess it's like what kinds of science.
Yeah.
But yeah, engineers, I love it. I love it all. It's all science, which is the amazing part about Star Trek.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, if you think about the original series too, right? I mean, they're on this 5-year mission to explore strange new worlds. Like, you could probably count just about everybody on that ship as a scientist at that point.
That's a good point.
I mean,
they're all scientists and explorers.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure Bashir mentions at least a few times like he's busy because he's like reviewing the latest papers and writing his own. And I mean, like, then you're an MD PhD. You're a scientist
Exactly.
too.
That's the cool thing. Or like you're an academic doctor if you don't even if you didn't have like a PhD also with your like super genetic brain. And then I think Bashir especially is like one of my favorites for that, because he's always like talking about, reviewing literature and working on his articles. And then like Fox also a little bit in that like genre with his knowledge of other species and always like working on comparing them. And then I guess you could also include Bones because of his book, but he's not.
And
my
Scott
favorite.
Jensen makes a good point. He says behavioral sciences. I mean, it's called behavioral science.
Exactly.
That's a good point.
Well, it's tricky. Like psychology has a very broad area. I mean, like you can go all the way and be like a neuroscientist and say you're a psychologist, and that's very, very clear. And then the other end of the extreme would be somebody who, like I said, is like a school counselor, where I mean, yeah, they learned a lot of behavioral aspects to it, but again, if you count that, you're basically just counting everything, which we can do that, but then we just have to acknowledge we're just basically counting everything.
Okay, that's it. It sounds like we're going to have to really parse through this one. So the bottom line here is assuming and expecting us to do, Anne Marie knows, expecting us to do, say, another thing like this, another similar type of panel for medical doctors, the other side of sciences. Would a counselor like Esri and Troy and Miglimo, would you put them more into the medical side or into the science side? Because I just assumed that was more medical.
It's more medical, but also like it's sort of like how nowadays we do it, like psychologists versus psychiatrists.
Yeah, I think it's more medical, but I also think of the trip that you have to take to do medical. It's all hard science. You're taking genetics, you're taking every biology class in existence on the campus of whatever university you're at. You're taking all of the science, genetics, you're taking a little bit of everything, physics, just to get there. Then once you get to medical school, you start to focus down on what you're studying, whether it's livers or hearts or psychology, all those things are when you're focusing on one single thing. As a scientist.
Okay, also like really, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
Oh, really dorkily, I also sort of go by like, who would bring medical journals or science journals if they're going on a runabout trip? Like O'Brien does for his engineering journals. And that like helps me in my mind say like, okay, they're more of a scientist. They're like nerding out about this on their runabout trips to catch up on the data. And like, I don't know if like Esri would be doing that as much.
Dorkily, Anne Marie says.
Dorkily. Yeah.
Well, I know that Star Trek, they divide the blues into just two parts, medical and science. But I just assumed that the counselors were on the side of medical, but maybe not. I never confirmed
they are.
That.
Like sometimes Troy and Crusher work together. And they work closely together in real life.
Okay, so that sounds like we're saving them for the next one then.
Yeah.
And definitely the people in the live chat are saying medical. They're like bullies right now. They're like yelling at us. It's very intimidating. Reno, Jet Reno's an engineer, right, guys? She's okay. Mm-hmm. And Data was also hotly debated.
He's everything.
I mean, he's in gold. He's an operations officer, but some of us said that he does a lot of science. So I don't know. What does everybody think at home? Do we put Data in the medical division or do we save him for the gold talk?
Do you mean engineering or science? Or I mean, Data's not a medical. Is that what you meant? Or
yeah, what did I say? Sorry.
You said medical.
Do you mean
engineering versus science?
I can't be held responsible for every dumb thing that comes out of my mouth. That's for damn sure. Okay. I mean, Scott Jensen just said medical. I don't know what.
Data?
I mean, he knows a lot. He probably could do a lot of it.
Do anything.
Yeah. He's solidly a scientist, I think. But again, the science engineering thing. I mean, they say STEM for science, technology, engineering, and math, and those are always like stuck together. I mean, you can't learn engineering without learning science, and the other way is also pretty tough too. So
that's when you start applying your science. Then
Exactly.
it's also sort of engineering.
Yeah, see, that's the soapbox thing I mentioned earlier too. That the whole idea of having a science officer is such a funny concept. I mean, what it should be is like there's a whole science division, and maybe there's a head of the science division. But aside from Discovery, which I think does that pretty well, hence this uniform.
Nice.
Aside from Discovery, they very rarely do that in Star Trek. It's just like, oh, there's something weird. It has to do with science. Spock, tell us about that. Like science, like he knows geology or physics or or chemistry or biology. Like what? No, he would take this to his division, but the specialist there would then do it. Now the nice thing is in the original series they did have these specialists that would come up from below decks every now and then. Like, oh, we need a geologist, and he'd be one of the people that goes on the landing party and usually gets killed. But but at least they did have specialists there. But this idea of just a science officer is very odd. It should just be like the head of the science division, and that person just happens to be a chemist or whatever. So
right, because honestly, like Spock knows a lot, but they surely have a geologist and an astrobiologist, and an entomologist, and he'd probably be like, Captain, I defer to everybody else that knows more about this stuff, obviously.
Exactly. But Discovery is pretty good because there you see so much of that teamwork. Like, all right, Stamets and Tilly and Adira and all them, they all get together in a room. They're like, all right, let's hash this out.
So cool.
And that, that happened periodically with the other series, like with Voyager, but there would just be like, it would be, Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres and Tuvok. And like, okay, it's kind of all over the place. It's not a bunch of people who are necessarily scientists, but it's just, a broad swath of the group. So the process was similar, but I feel like Discovery does it more like it probably would be. Realistic. That's my opinion. Yeah, more realistic.
Well, that's maybe what Spock is doing when he looks in his little thing, instead of, we think he's looking at the astrophysical phenomenon, but really what he's doing is he's reading the reports from the lower decks going like, okay, excellent. And then he reports to Kirk.
All frantically typing into that.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it, Mike.
Wow, that is really good. Okay, well then that leads us to the big question here, at least the big question on my mind. Out of all of these scientists or blue shirts, who do you think in your mind seems the most like a scientist in your experience? Whether you're talking about how they're written or how they're acted, which one of them actually sounds the most like a scientist or reminds you of your buddy whose paper you used to cheat off of in college? Not that you guys ever cheated. That's a lot of dead air.
I haven't answered, but I just talked a lot. So like somebody else go.
No, let's hear it.
Go.
I'd say Tilly. I mean, honestly, like, she's excited about science. She's always willing to dive into it. She's a little bit insecure about when she's doing it. That to me sounds like a lot of the scientists I know.
I'll just second that, Mohamed. When Discovery aired, immediately my favorite character was Tilly, because she reminded me of myself, early career scientist, trying to make it, nervous about impressing the boss Stamets, and then eventually becoming mentored by Stamets as well as Michael Burnham, and really needing to work hard and learning the lessons of how to be a leader, as well as that sometimes it just takes perseverance to get through really tough times. And I feel like science is a lot about that too. So I second that. I really think that Tilly embodies a lot of what it means to be a scientist.
Especially that excitement too. That's the part that really gets me. That like, wow, we found it. That's the power of math, people. I mean, Jen's like, she'll solve the problem and like, here's the answer. Okay, she's not as excited about it.
Yeah,
it's cool, but.
And Tendi on lower decks. Oh, sorry, Sue.
Oh, good call.
I interrupt you. I think because of all the lifetime in her, I guess that's the right way to say it, she can do a lot of different things. I can remember what was the episode where the guy died. He was a criminal and he killed a lot of people, and he got some little thing under his nail. Remember, she was poking under his nail looking for a glial cell.
It's like a Latin thing where like then Bashir becomes
right. But I can remember she was poking under his dead finger, looking, and I forget what her question was, but it had to do with glial cells. And I'm thinking, boy, it doesn't get any more scientific than that. But it wasn't just that. She knew a lot about all different things. But one person, I'm just thinking that's her knowledge of science, really, and physics and engineering and everything was so wide. I mean, she could fly a ship. She knew a little bit about medicine and a lot about different science.
It is true. Sometimes she has like really subtle, like her excitement is more subtle because I guess she's older and has so many lifetimes. But like one time, I think it's in an episode, or no, it's in the one where Keiko's taken over by a Pawraith, and Jadzia Dax like catches them because she just happened to be awake and was flipping through like security, like ship logs to check on some science and like that was going on outside, just but nothing was expected to be weird. She just like likes to check through it, and it really reminded me of like when you're flipping through data like after hours just because you're curious how things are going that are like on autopilot in the lab, or else like numbers being logged like for patients or something. I'm like, I love that nerdy just passion for it, but it is, like you guys said, more muted with Jadzia just because she's seen so much, so it takes a lot kind of to excite her.
Sue made a great point, though. I didn't think about this with regard to her being a Trill, that she actually could be the true science officer because she could have been trained in physics and chemistry and all these different things.
I kind of thought that with
That's a
Spock
great
also, because like Spock, I don't know how old he is, but like he also could have like trained for multiple.
Yeah.
That's my headcanon anyway.
I'm just making a note of that. That's good stuff. Anne-Marie, did we get your most like a scientist?
You know, I love them all.
I was like, wait, we didn't get your answer, dude.
Obviously, the ones I know most, what I'm most familiar with would be like a PhD in medical science or like MD PhD. And so like Bashir really rings true, especially when he sort of like falls down little rabbit holes that nobody else cares about, but he still continues talking about them, even though like Jake's eyes are glazing over in Nor the Battle to the Strong, or, you know, just like once you get into the later years of Deep Space Nine, they kind of like dabble more in that, like what he happens to be working on, or just, you know, checking up on some studies that no one ever like checked up on, contacting Starfleet Medical for like random questions. Like you can see him really thinking it through. Also with like the Carrington Award, that is so like on point for academic medical science, at least. Like, you know, well, it also takes into account like how early in your career are you? They don't want to set this kind of example. Like it really captured like some of the nuances of that. But Bashir seems like so passionate about like checking the science of the studies. And then the other person I would say is Janeway. Like when she talks about like her passion for science comes through occasionally, and she really likes like crunching some numbers occasionally in her ready room alone and checking over the science, and like that's like a science passion that's like fun to see in a captain.
Speaking of crunching, which Janeway are we talking about? Are we talking about Kate Mulgrew or the Canadian lady whose name I forgot when she said it's not crunch time yet, Mr. Paris?
Genevieve
Bujold, that's what it is. Yeah.
Yeah, no, Kate Mulgrew as a person.
I just felt like I needed to keep up with some knowledge because you guys were dropping knowledge bombs here. And everybody in the chat, there's a lot of good stuff very quickly.
Great point about Tendi. I totally had forgotten about Tendi.
Yeah, same.
How did I forget?
Well, because she's a doctor. She's medicine.
Wasn't she like thinking of switching to other blue?
Yeah.
Yes, she's about to. Right. So everybody in the chat right now, tell us who you think from your perspective seems the most like a scientist. J.R. Poole said science officers who were promoted to captain: Spock, Janeway, Burnham, and Dax was in command of the Defiant.
Crusher, maybe in an alternate timeline for the Pester.
That was really cool. And Mike, did we get the person that you think seems like the most like the scientist you know?
Tilly.
Yeah, I'm going with Tilly.
Right. That's right.
Same with Mohamed,
yeah.
but I also wanted to touch upon Tendi, whose enthusiasm very much mirrors that of Tilly's, and her changing of career paths is also not uncommon in real life science for somebody to go to school for one thing and then decide later on in their career that they wanted to study something else too, and that's totally fine. I loved the points about Jadzia that Sue brought up. We always talk about we want to increase diversity and inclusion in science. And the big reason for that is because we want to see what other people's ways of viewing the world might be. And so Jadzia in just one person has like 7 different ways of viewing the world. And I really love that. And then Anne-Marie brought up Janeway, who I definitely count as one of my favorite science officers on Star Trek, even though we don't really see her in that capacity. But it's really important to recognize in real life science the role of leaders, who may not be in the lab all the time crunching the numbers, although Janeway does that in her spare time, right? But that's not her primary job. Also in real science, these leaders who hold up the infrastructure of science, who sit on national committees and decide what projects get funded, who help build spacecraft and plan out missions, who are deans of departments like Professor Mohamed Noor, that help everybody else run their science and allows everybody else the capacity to be in the lab or be at their computer. That's just so important as well. So Janeway being the captain of a science starship is sort of like the dean of a college.
Such an amazing point. Also, like people like Dr. Mohamed Noor who go on to consult for Star Trek, the actual show, and then
by the way,
countless people are being inspired by that, and a whole future generation. It's just amazing.
That is really cool that you said that, because that's literally the next thing I was going to ask. But J.R. Poole did say Anne-Marie with the knowledge tsunami, so good work there. That sounds like a good thing. So this was something I was kind of thinking about too. And Anne-Marie, you basically led us right into it. Who do you think of all the science type characters, of the blue shirts, that is likely to be the most likely to inspire children or the next generation to go into the sciences? Because I know a lot of you may have been inspired by somebody, may have been Star Trek related, but really, I mean, it's probably Spock, because
no, my one action figure ever was Dr. Crusher. I loved her.
You only had one?
Ever, yeah.
Give us your Guinan card back.
I have a Guinan on my desk.
Nice. So who do you guys think? Like, do you think Spock will stand the test of time and there are 9-year-olds out there saying, I want to be like Spock? Or do you think they're saying, I want to be like Adira, or Dax is where it's at? Who do you think is out there inspiring kids right now to do? We'll start with Sue because she's nodding.
I'm still going with Jadzia, but it's kind of cheating, since it's not really just one person's knowledge, to have all of those previous hosts that had their areas of expertise. She's just another human computer when it comes to science. And I'm thinking one thing I wanted to add was, to this day, I still, when I travel, I'll print out a peer-reviewed manuscript that's based on what I'm interested in, or sometimes not, but usually it's entomology based, and I love that. I will never, when I stop doing that, I'm dead. I'm still interested, in every little bit of research that's being done, and I think, how about the rest of you? Do you do the same thing when you travel? You bring something to read on the plane or whatever?
Always.
Yeah, never get tired of that. I'm trying to put my files in order. I use EndNote. I don't know what everybody else uses for their EndNote is a program where you have all of your peer-reviewed papers that you've read that you want to use in something that you write. and you click on it and it automatically puts it into something you write in the literature review area.
All
But
formatted
I have
for you.
over 1,000 printed out. I think the money I spent before the internet and you could just go online to the library that way. I have thousands of, and you have to enter every single little thing. But then after that, you just click a button and it cites for you. But I think it's exciting to read about new things that are being done. And I think that's what makes a good scientist as well. Things change. And that's science doesn't, people say, oh, well, it proves something. Science proves something. I disagree with that. It's ever changing. And I think ultimately, I hate to say that we're looking for the truth, but that's kind of what we're doing. But we're open, we're open. If we discover something new, figure out something new, there's no problem with that. Let's just add it to the list. The evolution of learning about something, a creature or a microbe or whatever.
Real quick, I just want to jump in. It reminded me of something I saw, I don't remember, a couple of years ago. I don't remember what the exact subject matter was, but it was, generally about science. And they were having a debate. It might have been like religion versus science or something like that. Whatever it was, the person was asking the scientist, like, kind of like, well, what would you do if it was proven that you are wrong? Or if somebody came out and proved that God exists or then what would you do? And the scientist was like, no, that person would be carried out on our shoulders. We would be like, yay, like no scientist would ever be like, new information.
I think it actually gives you the gift of knowing you don't know.
Oh yeah, I've been proven wrong many times.
The more you know, the more you know, the more you know you don't know.
And I think that's like the most important thing, and that helps that would help everybody get along more and really helps the world and continues driving research and everything, but also just helps on a social level. I love that about science.
Yeah, one of my grad school mentors said, Mike, you think you're here to learn a bunch of science, but also remember that you should be open to unlearning a lot of science because science is always moving. True. And so I want to give a shout out to Paul, who I don't think we've mentioned too much in detail yet.
Yes, thank you.
But throughout the course of the 4 seasons of Enterprise, T'Pol does a little bit of unlearning about, the Vulcan Science Director. It says that time travel is impossible. And by the end, she's experienced time travel herself. So she was open to that. And it took a lot of hard work on her part, but she got through and got closer to the truth, as Sue was talking about, that we're always trying to spiral towards this truth. We may never quite get there, but we're always getting there through a process of learning and unlearning.
And not afraid to admit if we discover something or that we're wrong about something. It happens, and I think that makes a better scientist too. You can't always, you do your best to research and get whatever it is that you're studying right, but sometimes you miss something or somebody else finds something out that you didn't know, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with saying, it's not a mistake exactly. There's just more that you didn't see, more to learn. About how much there is to learn, it's overwhelming. It's never enough. I would get, when I was working on my doctorate, it was the hardest thing for me was to focus on my one thing. I'd be doing one thing and a certain fly would have this behavior that's never been written about. And I would get obsessed. Oh, I want to know about their behavior. My advisor kept saying, no, Sue, you need to turn around and focus more on this. But I saw more stuff that I didn't write about, about that one fly. I could spend lifetimes just studying one little thing.
Mohamed, what was that hammerhead fly that we saw a couple days ago?
Oh yeah, the stock-eyed flies.
Stock-eyed, yeah.
They're beautiful.
No, but you were going to say something.
Do they have the stock-eyed flies?
Yeah, real long.
They're so cool.
Very cool.
I've never seen one in life, only on pictures of photographs of them.
So I was going to say my last PhD student, the last student of mine who graduated, her name's Catherine Coronis, but she had multiple chapters to her dissertation, and multiple of those chapters disproved things that I had suggested in earlier papers. Couldn't be prouder of her. I mean, oh my gosh, this is great. I mean, sometimes it wasn't just like completely wrong, but I thought it worked this way, and it's like, it's this way, but there's a twist over here that I missed and things like that. Fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I know.
Back to your original question, Ryan, in terms of who I think would inspire people. I think I go back to Janeway, honestly, because I mean, holy
she
moly.
has a new show for kids.
Yeah, well, I mean, aside from that, that's a good point.
Wow, yes.
That's a great answer. But just the way she was in impossible circumstances, but she didn't let the scientists come out of her. Right. I mean, where, she was constantly like, we're going to explore this, we're going to do this. And there were so many times when 7 of 9 or Neelix or one of those folks would tease her and be like, why don't you just like go warp 9 towards the Alpha Quadrant, stop stopping everywhere along the way? And she's like, no, we are explorers, which, I mean, but when she's saying explorers, she really means scientists in this sense, because they want to understand these things. Oh, look, there's a really cool supernova that's doing this thing we've never seen before. Oh, here's an interesting culture that we've never seen before. And that level of curiosity, especially coming from the top. So, I mean, as a role model, when you see that, and this is relating to the point that Mike said earlier, when that's coming down from the top, that sets the tone for everything else. And she really did that for the ship, for the show, for the series in a big way. So I'd pick Janeway in that regard. And as a concrete example, Dr. Aaron McDonald, who we all know, who's the science advisor for the Star Trek franchise, has credited Janeway. She actually acknowledged her in her PhD dissertation. So proof's in the pudding.
Anne-Marie. There's somebody named Mary Ann in
my
the.
mom.
I just love that Anne-Marie's mom is Mary Ann. That's just great. I'll never get over that. Anne-Marie, who do you think is the character that might inspire the new generation the most?
So one part of it is like what age group, because every age group is different, obviously. I think like Janeway across the board, she even inspired like Naomi Wildman on the show. And I think Janeway is like one of those characters because she's also in like a command position and like commanding everybody. Like she really has like an ability to inspire everybody, no matter like of all like shapes, sizes, genders, everyone. And then I think it starts like breaking out into subsets. Like I was really inspired by like Dr. Crusher because I was watching TMV as a little kid, and like Counselor Troy, she's so great with her patients and is so cool on the ship and looks super hot doing it, really stylish. Or like and like
okay, but didn't you like her better in the official uniforms? Like, thank you, Jellicoe. Like when she put that thing on, I was like, actually, she looks better like that.
So I couldn't even really tell. I just liked her hair, and then like later on,
you're going to talk about the exercisey outfits for a second.
That's what I thought you were going to say too. Right?
Well, like on Deep Space Nine, like Jadzia is such a cool role model. Like as I got older, and like even now, like somebody so well rounded in her life, but also like so great at her job and loves science so much, and is able to also like let loose and have fun. Which, as you get into like studying for like your graduate degrees and in college to get in, it's so stressful. With you're like so all consumed with that, it's hard to have another like a well-rounded life. And Jadzia is someone who like is such a great role model because she can really balance that. And like she's out at like, in addition to being so great at her job, she's also like playing Dabo and has like really fun, like a fun crew of friends. And I think like Star Trek has so many inspirational scientists for all different periods of and all different ages. So
since you guys brought it up, here are the two leotards, the stretching leotards from Next Generation, but on lower decks.
Which really are just an 80s aerobics outfit.
I don't think that's a thing. If you had to wear one of them, would you wear the Crusher or the Troy? I feel like
here's the thing, I like dark green better.
Okay. Mohamed?
I think it hurt. I don't think I can pick one.
I don't know. Yeah, I guess I'd have to go with the Crusher. But for dudes, like it would be really called the Crusher. But
yeah, it would hurt.
Michael, what do you think? Who's a blue shirt, or in Janeway's case, a red shirt, that you think would inspire the young generation the most?
Well, I'll just echo the thoughts that, Janeway has a new kids show out. I thought that was a perfect way of putting it. I'm really looking forward to watching along and pretending that I'm a kid again and getting inspired by Janeway all over again, because I grew up in the 90s watching Star Trek Voyager and being inspired by Janeway as well. I also think you can't really argue against Spock. I mean, Spock, it's a little bit unfair because you've got so many Spocks. You've got Leonard Nimoy Spock. You've got Zachary Quinto Spock. You've got Ethan Peck Spock.
We're hemorrhaging Spocks over here.
There are just so many Spocks. So I think the power of Spock and the legacy of Spock as that quintessential scientist will also just continue to get people inspired to go into STEM fields.
Yeah, and then there's also, who was it, Carol Marcus, right? If we're talking once we go into the
one geneticist.
I do love
oh,
her.
really? Is that what she
her
was?
Line.
Yeah. Well, it depends on which.
Cooker, can I?
It depends on which series. So if in Wrath of Khan, Carol Marcus was a geneticist, but Star Trek hates having good geneticists, so they then rebooted her as an engineer when it was in Into Darkness. It's like, no, she was a geneticist.
Okay, so here's a real quick question that I wasn't planning on until Sue, you mentioned it, and then Mohamed, you jumped on as well. About being super open-minded as scientists, and how the more you know, the more you realize what you don't know, and so on. That being said, do you think it's even possible to have something called scientific fact?
I would say yes.
Saying yes.
I would say yes.
But
were you going to elaborate?
Subject to change if something else happens.
Basically, like, I mean, the way you could say it is this: like, I am talking to you all right now. There's a probability associated with that, and that probability is not 100%, because I mean, for all I know, I'm a brain in a box that's being fed something, and in fact, I'm not talking to you all now. So,
or the Matrix.
This might be a Star Trek episode.
Right. I mean, basically, there becomes some level of certainty beyond which. Now, I'm not going to necessarily draw where that line is, but it becomes some level of certainty beyond which it's like, all right, this is a fact. As much as we can possibly know anything, it is a fact. And once it gets the same as, like, I know that I'm talking with you all. Yeah, okay. Yes, it's not 100.0000000%, but it's as good as we can ever get. So fact.
Yeah, really? I think science is often built off of theories, and theories gain strength by being shown to be observationally or experimentally correct. Yeah. And so one great example of a theory being improved without being, thrown out the window is Newtonian gravity, and then its update with Einstein's laws of general relativity. We now have a different conceptual framework for how gravity operates, but the laws of general relativity reduce to Newton's laws of gravity when you think about scales that are relevant to that. So, like, planets moving around the sun and things like that, they're all still obeying to a large extent Newton's laws of gravity. But when you get to like really extreme astrophysical phenomenon like black holes, then that's where you need to throw in a little Einstein in there. But Newton's laws aren't, like, they were updated rather than like thrown out. So we would say that Newton's laws are, very close to being scientific fact for the domain of science that they are relevant to. Same with Einstein's laws. They've been verified over and over and over again and are as close to scientific fact as you can get.
Right. But then and I'm just playing devil's advocate because I'm kind of a dick. So, because when you're saying that, it all makes sense to me. But then I'm thinking, if there are exceptions to this law, or if there are exceptions to this rule,
they were called
then I would say
recommendations or
that's not a fact.
suggestions, no one would buy them.
Right. But then I'm just saying, like, the definition of the word fact, as far as I know, it means that it's just like there is no possibility for an exception or for it to be wrong. Anne-Marie, save me. If you disagree with me too, then I'm 0 for 4 here.
It's kind of like laws of the land. That's why we have lawyers to just kind of like, set things. And it's also sort of like
Legal
rules
scientists.
of acquisition. they're set things and then they can be bent a little.
Well,
Or
let me,
yeah, go ahead.
no, I was going to turn around and say, tell me, besides anything using math, tell me something that's a fact that's not scientific.
Oh, wow. Math is a good point, though. Yeah, math.
That's what I think. Besides math.
Yeah, that is. Like, for example, well, when you said, Mohamed, you're talking to me, right? Okay, well, perception is reality. I think we all agree that you're talking to me and that I'm talking to you. But then what if we find out somehow, some way that actually was not the case? What if we kind of like when people, for example, thought it's a fact we see with our eyes. We don't actually see with our eyes. We see with our brain, and the eyes let it in. I don't really know shit about this kind of stuff, but that's the case, right? I mean, they're just kind of like the windows. And so the fact, I guess I shouldn't use that word, but the fact that science is constantly changing and evolving and adjusting, and even if we're finding, minute ways to add or adjust to it and say, well, except for this, or in this case, then can we in good conscience ever say something is a scientific fact, knowing that there's a possibility that it might be adjusted later or proven incorrect?
Well, my point being, the reason I asked the question with the exception of math was more in the sense that I think in terms of science, you can just as well as you can with just about anything else. Right. That, even if you say something outside of science, you say something from economics or, pick whatever your favorite discipline is. People say things are facts all the time that have nothing to do with science. I feel like science can be just as strong as that. I mean, this reminds me a lot of Aristotle's allegory of the cave. Do you guys remember this? Where, what we see, like it's imagine like being in a cave. I remember this from my intro philosophy class in college. Imagine being in a cave, and around the corner in this cave, there's a fire, and what we see are just basically these shadows, and that's what we're perceiving. And we can never actually know what's there, but we're inferring from these shadows in the cave of what the truth is. That applies to science, but applies to like everything we perceive. So if we're even going to have the word fact on something besides the fact like 1 + 1 = 2, and setting that one aside, then yeah, we can know something in science just as much as we can know something in any other area.
I feel like there's more. I even just now thought of stuff to talk about with math there that might actually say that 1 + 1 does not always equal 2. But anyway, we're going to get way off on track, and everybody's like, how does this have anything to do with Star Trek? But I do want to point out that who was it, Anne-Marie, that said Mohammed's brain?
When you were talking about that, they were like, is this an episode of Mohammed's brain?
That's so funny.
It's still better than Spock's brain.
Oh,
everything is
brain. What is brain?
All right, so now it's time for the real question, the big one, which is who is your
really fast? Can
what?
we talk about Mike Wong's podcast? That's amazing.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So it's called Strange New Worlds. And I started in 2017. So it was long before they announced Star Trek Strange New Worlds, the TV version of my podcast now. It's a science and Star Trek podcast. So it's all about the intersection of science and our beloved Star Trek. I bring on people who are practicing scientists who grew up watching Star Trek, were inspired by Star Trek, maybe even wrote a book about the science of Star Trek in Mohammed's case. And I also bring in people who work on the Star Trek side. So I've had a few Star Trek actors, including Anthony Rapp, who played Stamets, and talked about his experience. He attended actually an astrobiology science conference in 2019 that I was at. And he came to scientific lectures and remembered a whole ton of astrobiology and then spouted it back at us with the utmost awe and admiration at his keynote talk, because of course he was there to give the keynote talk at the end of the first day, and that just made me realize, wow, these people who are working on Star Trek, really, they're fans of stuff that scientists do just as much as we are fans of what they do as actors and people writing scripts and all that sort of good stuff that goes into the production of a Star Trek show. And so, yeah, my podcast is all about blending the two, melding the two, and just trying to take Star Trek as a lens into the scientific world.
So good.
Such a good podcast. I've been listening to it for years. Oh my gosh, it's so worth it.
I think
Everybody
I
should
heard
go
you
right
on
now
there
and go
before I
subscribe
met you.
for it.
It's really good.
Thanks, guys. Yeah. Means a
When
lot.
did you start? When did you
So it
start
was
the podcast?
2017, and I started it right around the time that Star Trek Discovery came out, because, big new show. Star Trek's back on the small screen after many, many years. So all the Star Trek podcasts out there were talking about it, but they were examining things that had nothing to do with science. And I was like looking at these binary stars, forming with their protoplanetary disks. And I was like, why is nobody even mentioning the cool astrophysics and planetary science that is being depicted here? If nobody else is going to comment on that, maybe I will. So I decided to make a podcast, and that's how that came about.
It's really cool. I just want to point out, everybody, that Glenn Iverson's on my team. He says one.
What pun did he make?
He said 1 equals 0.9999 to infinity is mathematically provable. Here, Glenn. Here. Sue's looking at me like I'm crazy. She's like, who cares, dude? Okay. This is what people care about. Let's say of the blue shirts, except medical, except counselor, who is your favorite of those characters? Of the, let's see, who's on that list? Spock, Jadzia, 7 of 9, T'Pol, Stamets, Ensign Wildman, Saru. Oh, Saru got no love. Lieutenant Commander Ariam, Adira, Hoshi for sure, and kind of Mordok. Sue, is it Jadzia?
I think it is. I think it is. Yes.
What about you, Mohamed?
I'm trying to think like best in what, or my favorite in what way, right? I mean, it's
While he's thinking, everybody at home, tell us your favorite out of that list.
I'm cheating by reading what people say.
That's a very juicy list. No cheating.
I like them all. It's really hard to just say like this one's the best. In a general
Okay.
way.
Well, I'll tell you my favorite.
So just your favorite, like in general, right?
I've been saving. Oh, wait a second.
You're gonna say Hoshi.
No, I'm not. Talk amongst yourselves.
Oh wait, where's your little blue shirt? He has to make an appearance.
Yeah, I'm having real trouble deciding on a favorite. I mean, they're all so amazing
tough.
in their own ways.
Really good. I mean, sort of jack of all trades. I might actually pick Jadzia too. I mean,
He definitely is the jack of all trades.
Here it is.
I knew it.
Oh, nice.
Tapestry Picard.
Tapestry. He was well, what was he? An astrophysicist, I think, lieutenant junior grade.
Was he? I figured like something in maybe something in stellar cartography.
Maybe it was stellar. No, I think it was
wasn't it?
Stellar.
I think wasn't what was Cisco?
It was astrophysicist number 7. But yes, this is my favorite scientist of all, even though he was ashamed of himself for just being a scientist. But he was punctual.
It's a great line.
Yeah, okay.
I don't remember what else he said, but he said he was.
Yeah, that was such a great career.
He's like looking at Deanna like, help me out, Deanna. What else? Boy, you get stuff done.
Clean uniform.
Anyway. Clean uniform. Oh, everybody that's just listening, I held up a toy of Captain Picard as Lieutenant Junior Grade Picard in Tapestry. My friend Darth says they're not toys, they're not dolls, they're action figures. Okay, they're action figures. Anyway, so did we end up getting your favorite, Mohamed?
I'll go with Jadzia too. I mean, in terms of just like jack of all trades, science officer who's amazing, and she is amazing. I'll go with Jadzia. From that list.
Wow, surprising. Anne Marie, Luoxana is exempt.
Oh, damn it. Aunt Moogie, they're always my choices. Jadzia, T'Pol, and Seven are also, those two are really great too. But Jadzia is awesome.
And why?
And she knows when to ask for help, like to go to
Yeah.
other people, like Bashir or O'Brien or somebody. Like she's great at knowing the limits of her information.
Except in Meridian.
Oh yeah, except in relationship advice.
Or in what was the episode? Children of Time. She also was like, don't worry, we got this. And tisk tisk.
But I love that she also used her scientific knowledge to help educate the children in that Children of Time timeline. But really, I think the knowing her limits and asking for help is a really good thing that's what differentiates her from T'Pol and Seven for me. Although they both get better at it over.
Melissa Longo, our good friend, names, I guess, 4 of her favorites: Jadzia, Seven, T'Pol, and Saru. Mike, I know it's a toughie.
Yeah, it's
your
virtually
favorite on that list?
impossible. I mean, they're all amazing. So I'll just go with Lieutenants Matt and Kamolu, the cetacean ops officers from the last episode. Because I've been enjoying Star Trek Lower Decks.
Good knowledge.
Recently. I may be biased, but I watched that episode 5 times, and it came out like 2 weeks ago. So I can't get enough of Lower Decks right now. It's infinitely rewatchable, and Matt and Kamulu were 2-star science officers on that show.
You could pick the whole ship, the Equinox, since it was a science vessel.
Sure. But they have pilots and security officers on there, right? Or do you think it's just all scientists? I don't know.
I'm just kidding.
Well, there are no ethicists.
Yeah, no, clearly.
Wow, lots of people are loving this. Okay. So now is the time of day, the time in the show where we tell everybody where they can find us online if we want to be found online.
Are you going to do the trivia question first?
Oh, we'll get to the trivia.
Oh, okay.
I'm already looking for my cards right now. Mohamed, where can people find you online if you'd like to be found?
Sure. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all using the same hashtag @ MAF, like Frank Noor and like November OOR, or on YouTube. If you just search for BioTrekkie Explains or BioTrekkie with 2 Ks, you'll find me.
Where can they find you, Dr. Anne-Marie Segal?
Twitter @ Anne-Marie Segal, SEGAL 1. And then also on Sunday at Virtual TrekCon, hosting a science quiz with Dr. Mohamed Noor and meteorologist Katie.
What time?
3 p.m. Eastern. This Sunday.
Wait, there's going to be daylight savings time, right? So
yeah,
everybody,
but that's already
make
happened.
sure. What?
So it'll be back to being like the same amount of time difference as usual to like the UK and Europe.
Mike Wong, where can we find you and your podcast?
Sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at MikeY. That's MIQUAI. And the podcast, again, is Strange New Worlds, a science and Star Trek podcast. And you can get that basically anywhere you get your podcasts.
Nice. Dr. Sue, do you even want to be? Oh, it says entomophilia.
Entomophila. My native word. It's entom is Greek or Latin for insect, and phyla means lover. So that's my name on Twitter, and I'm trying to think. I'm in other places.
Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok.
Yeah, Instagram.
I'm entomophiliac.
There's a lot of bug sites that I'm on. People can send pictures of bugs they don't know what they are. But yeah, Instagram and Twitter, I'm entomophila.
Okay.
Amazing.
So we'll get to the trivia question in just a moment. But before we do that, I'd like to know, as scientists and doctors, and all 4 of you are doctors, what would you like to be the takeaway from people watching the scientists on Star Trek? what, for example, would it be the open-mindedness of the scientist? Would it be to, always get your man or whatever, in a buddy cop show? This isn't a buddy cop show, but is there something that, or just that curiosity, or, what would you want people to take away from watching science officers or science specialists on Star Trek, Anne Marie?
I think the open-mindedness and also like the confidence that learning how much, like learning more and then also learning how much you don't know gives you. And like how much more acceptance it gives if you keep an open mind and listen to what other people are saying, especially on Star Trek where that oftentimes like helps the solution. I think all of those are great things that also apply to like real life.
What do you think, Mike?
I think the takeaway should be that if you wanted to be a scientist, you can be one too. We've talked about so many different kinds of people today. Trills with worms in their gut. We talked about some androids and cyborgs. We talked about men, women, people who don't use gender binaries. We talked about all sorts of people from all different backgrounds making a contribution in the sciences, in the Star Trek future. And so I was inspired by Star Trek to go into the sciences. And if you feel the same way, just know that you can do it too.
Mm-hmm. Entomophila?
I think science is a great field to go into. There's so much that we don't know. Who knows? We might discover something fabulous. And it's not an easy field. You have to take a lot of hard courses to get anywhere in the science field. You're taking everything, engineering, physics, lots of math, things like that. But in the end, if you have a love for it, for me, being a scientist is an adventure. There's always something new that you can look for. There is a way to validate maybe something that you've done. And when you're doing that, you find something else. It's a never-ending treasure hunt to look for cool things, to study whatever you want. Find something that you have a passion about. And it's just amazing what will happen. And I think most scientists were pretty cool. We may have quirky senses of humor, but I kind of resent it when people call me a nerd. But I am a proud nerd. Damn, I am damn proud of being a nerd. And there's a love of always wanting to learn something new. And I hope that never changes. I don't know if that's true in other fields, but I know that it's true in science.
Mm-hmm. Mohamed, how proud of a nerd are you?
Yeah, it's okay. Just kidding. Just teasing. No, I'm very proud nerd. I guess the takeaway I like, you mentioned the word creativity, which I think is really important. And one thing I love, in addition to everything that you all made excellent points, one other piece I'd add is I love that Star Trek emphasizes the value to basic science. It's not all about just like, how do we build the bridge to cross this thing? How do we solve this disease? How do we solve, it's not all just that, but it's just, there's value to exploration because we don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we'll find things of enormous value by just exploring and just, seeing what's out there and trying to understand what's out there. The value will come later. And I think Star Trek emphasizes that all the time. And I really appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
And that it's like so many, it's not even just the like what you think of as science, which sort of is like evidenced by the early discussion of like how hard it is to categorize what a science officer is or who's a science officer. I love that really it bleeds into everything, and all of the concepts you learn in science courses, practicing science can really be applied to like every field.
Well said.
People
Very
use
cool.
it every day. They just don't know it. People that are phobic of science, they think it's really hard, and it can be. But it's like people that don't like algebra, who actually use it 100 times a day. They just don't know it. But you use science every day. I mean, if you drink a cup of coffee in the morning and you're adding sugar and something simple as that, you're changing, you're sweetening it, or you're adding salt, or you're driving your car. And I guess that's a little bit of science and physics and engineering, but there's still science in there. Coloring your hair. There's science in
Exactly,
that.
like every single thing. Like,
Cooking for
everything.
sure.
entertainment,
Everything.
music. It's amazing.
Oh yeah.
All right, everybody in the chat, try to say one thing that is not science related. We dare you. All right. So it's now time for the trivia question. Anne-Marie was clamoring for it, for the last
I
half
love
hour.
Trivia.
Why did you just put ESPN in the
That's
chat?
the one thing
Anne-Marie?
that's not science
Okay. Hey,
And yet
hey.
ESPN runs a sports science segment.
Yeah. There's a lot of
stand
science and sports
corrected.
out there. It's true.
All right. So here's the question of the
Good
day.
time.
In Mirror, Mirror, what weapon does Kirk keep concealed in his quarters? Nobody answer yet. Give everybody a chance here. Is
I
it
want to see what
A?
he's concealing.
Watch it. Easy.
Okay, continue.
A Tantalus field. B, aceton assimilator. C, trilithium resin. Or the D. Oh, Metreon cascade. Is it
It's really hard.
Tantalus? Anne-Marie. Is it Tantalus field, aceton assimilator, trilithium resin, or Metreon cascade? A, B, C, or D?
Use your inner
Everybody
Fonzie.
at home. What's up?
I said use your inner Fonzie.
Wow,
B.
I would have never known the answer in a million years. I would have guessed C or D because that's always answers always have those words, but apparently
Wait
wrong.
for it. Hey.
Look at the chat.
Yeah, so everybody
Like
to
unanimous.
get the answer, hang on 1 second. We'll give the answer in just a moment, but we're going to tell you what to look forward to this week. Yesterday, the Seventh Rule just premiered the full episode of the review of Blaze of Glory. That's Deep Space Nine Season 5, Blaze of Glory. Melissa Longo joined us. Obviously, Sirach Lofton and I were there. Great episode. You can find that right now on the Seventh Rule. We'll also include it in the description box below of this video that is on now. It's
What's
happening.
that end of
We
Eddington?
released it yesterday. No spoilers, but yeah.
Mm.
Also, the Seventh Rule on Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Eastern time, we'll review episode 2 of Prodigy with, it's time to announce it, Bonnie Gordon. She was with us on the first one. She did the voice of the computer. Apparently, she has a much bigger role in the second episode, and she was so fun, and we loved having her. So Bonnie Gordon, voiceover actress and cast member of Prodigy, will be joining us for the review. That's at 6 p.m. Pacific. All 4 of you are Eastern time people, right? So 9 p.m. And then on Sunday, as you know, we have this science panel. That'll be at 3 p.m. Eastern. We got a lot of other goodies, a lot of other great stuff, including the premiere of Falling Towers review. Watch the first Star Wars Visions. And we're bringing back the 4 chums, myself and Michael, Rico E. Anderson, and Darth. We also, Darth Shuey. We reviewed My Little Pony. We reviewed Golden Girls. So now we're doing Star Wars Visions. That'll be on Sunday. Everybody stick around to check that out all week long. Lots of fun. Okay, the answer is... Did a lot of people get that?
Dude, everybody said the same thing.
Wow, good job,
I'm not
guys.
seeing the chat. I don't know why.
Everyone said Tantalus device. Super
Yep.
tantalizing.
And they were correct. They were all correct. Did you guys know that?
Your inner Fonzie. Hey.
I would have never guessed that.
Very good. All right. So I think that's about it. Everybody at home, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to Sue, Mohamed, Mike, and Anne-Marie. Let them know in the comments below what a great job they did, how much fun you had, and everything that you want to say about science officers. And also tell us who your favorite science officer or specialist or blue shirt, whatever you want to call it, in the comments below. Let us know. Give this video a like, share it with your friends. And, you know, do you guys have any songs or bands that you think should have a re-listen this week? Everybody wants to rewatch. I'm rewatching Deep Space Nine, or I'm rewatching Enterprise. Do you think they should re-listen to Poison, Open Up and Say Ah? Or Poison?
I'm just waiting for the new Mariah Carey announcement on November 5th. I'm guessing it's a Christmas album. How are you not super excited?
I love the look on Ryan's doing a Homer.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited.
All right, I guess. Okay, Mariah Carey. Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. And everybody at home, if you are looking for Mariah Carey and Science Talk, put it on the main viewer.
Award-winning combo.